you so much for accepting my invitation to speak with me on my series, Asking the Hard Questions. What legacy are we leaving our young? And I'm just bowled over by your level of experience and expertise. And I am so grateful that you would have taken time out to speak to me on this. You are just a multi-talented thought leader, great knowledge and experience and expertise across management and leadership, adjunct lecturer at Redlands, the University of Redlands, yes. Write and work with Forbes, and big into promoting the lot of the disabled through your work. That only gets a little bit of it. I also would like to know a little bit more about your mentoring program as we go as well. And so in asking the hard question to you from the very beginning, are we leaving our young with challenge or opportunity from the way you see it? Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be with you. I got to know you, and I'll be more than happy to share my thoughts with you and your audience.
Thank you.
Yes, I have been with the University of Redlands. I'm a core faculty with them, and I'm also with the mentor program where we pay attention to our graduate and undergraduate students. It's a 6-month program where we guide individuals within the school to be the best they can be.
Very good.
So that's as far as mentorship program and as far as what I do. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I love what I do.
Very good.
Yes, we are, as far as challenges and opportunities, and I like the way you placed your question. I do love it because you didn't mention the word problem. It's a challenge.
A challenge.
It's a challenge.
What is a problem? A problem is something to be worked on, to overcome, and render it a strength and move on.
Every problem has a solution, and every challenge has an opportunity. So the question, as far as young, we do have challenges, and we need to address them. How do we address them? We address them at the leadership level. Leaders do set the tone, regardless of society, regardless of organizations, or whatever your position is. If you are in a position of leaders, you set the tone. As far as the young, we have an issue of employment and how they can become the way they want to become, meaning successful individuals contributing to society positively. The challenges we have is, did we find the right opportunities for them?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is no. So yes, we are keeping them with challenges. And my advice is for each individual, young or leader, to create an opportunity out of these challenges so they can benefit all. The leader will benefit the organization, and the young will benefit himself or herself and the society they're in. Because if you are unemployed, you're definitely gonna stay with your parents. If you're young, that's gonna be a burden on the family. And you're not gonna be able to find yourself, because if you have a job, you really have dignity. Job brings you dignity. Job brings you self-confidence.
Sure.
So the challenge we have is, how do we create opportunities for them?
So it's ethical leadership you're really talking about, and leadership with heart.
Leadership with heart and compassion and empathy, and they must be authentic in dealing with the young and dealing with society in general. Because when you are in a position of power and you have the influence to make the difference, you really must make the difference and improve the lives of these individuals, whether young or otherwise.
What do they say about power? With power comes a fierce responsibility. You know?
Yeah, definitely. You have, with not only responsibility, accountability as well. If you are in a position of power and you're not producing results, you must be accountable.
Sure.
The unfortunate thing, most people in power are not accountable.
Yes,
so that's
where it goes
the
wrong.
The saga continues. Yes.
So I think this time of COVID-19 has caused us all to stop dead in our tracks in ways and reevaluate where we've been going. But it's also a time to create and recreate the way we want to be, but particularly with our young. It has been a wonderful experience for some families to actually have to work from
They
home,
connect.
to connect with their children, to get, particularly for maybe people who would have traveled a lot, to get to know their children, and to that notion of work-life balance has more or less been turned on its head to work-life integration. And it's been, in Ireland, we had a recession in 2008, and work seemed to eat into people's time more and more. They were spending less and less time with their children, which does cause a lot of problems. But the notion of having closure in your workday and tending to the other pillars of your life, like family life, like your community work and your networking with people, and like having time for yourself. That was all beginning to be lost. So I would hope that the changes that happen now, that pivot will last, and that
Will
people
continue.
won't, yeah, and that people won't lapse into their old ways once the inevitable recession hits post-COVID. What do you envisage post-COVID in terms of worldwide recession possibilities?
Well, COVID taught us anything. It taught us that we have to care for others.
Mhm.
The connectivity you're talking about, that was a must. When we have by default, we must have a physical distance, but it doesn't mean we must disconnect from others. We must, and I advise that, and I actually wrote a few articles on Forbes.com for leaders to connect and for leaders to care and for us to keep the distance. Yes, because of medical reasons or because of as recommended, but it doesn't mean we have to keep ourselves disconnected. If you're a parent and you missed an opportunity to connect with your children, and if you're a child and you miss an opportunity to connect with your parent, you're really at a loss. Because to connect and to have this connections between you and family matters, to connect with family and be able to move from that one forward to society and neighbors and even to the organization employment, then you missed a lot of opportunities. So COVID taught us to care, to be for one another, and the we in us matters. You can just talk about the I and what I should do, I myself. Now, what I envision COVID after what's happening, and it's going to take probably another year or so. And we are in March 2021 now. So it's going to take us another year to recover, hopefully, as the people become more aware of the vaccination process and how it works. And we have a herd mentality as far as eventually that's going to lead to hopefully everybody is immunized somehow. COVID is going to, as far as distance, as far as workplace, we may maintain probably 50% of what we have now. And eventually we're going to go back, of course, to the physical place, whether education or work.
Sure.
We're going to go back, but the model that is working now is going to continue. We're going to maintain some of those remote locations. It's going to be definitely combined. Some of the locations that we rented or we occupied for physical locations for employment or education may be minimized and be used for something different, hopefully other community involvements and probably activities, but definitely the combined effort of what we have now, which proved to be working,
Sure.
and the old traditions.
Sure.
It's definitely both, combination of both.
I think, for our youngsters, our schoolgoers, they need that interaction and that social interaction, etc., as part of their development. But there is a new challenge in front of educators at first level, preparing them for second level and on to third level in terms of turning the education system on its head. We would have certain frameworks that we work towards, within first level and second level and preparing them for third level, which is the university. I think really post-COVID, they're rendered unusable. They really need to be revisited and changed to accommodate a different type of thinking and outside the box type of thinking in terms of possibilities for the future. Yeah, what would you think?
I do agree with you that we have a disconnect as far as regardless of not only youth though, not only the young. I know we need to prepare them at a certain time and certain stage of their lives to develop. And that's very much needed. And I agree with you. They need to connect and they need to meet others so they can be more open-minded and they're more aware of the environment instead of being isolated. The role of parent here plays a part, but also the community itself. But we're talking about this one now matters because we bring awareness to it. So a show like this, I do thank you for that point, because a show like this, and we're talking about it, it brings awareness, and that hopefully will eventually lead to action. Now, whose job is to do this? Definitely parents. Parents have to be aware of it, and they must find ways for these young adults at whatever level to be able to communicate with others, interact with others, whether neighbors, whether bring some sort of communication has to be. And as I told you, what we're living with now is temporary, and hopefully within a year we should be out of it. Those 2-3 years, that shouldn't be the foundation that children would live with. Eventually they can adjust and adapt and move forward to the connectivity we're talking about.
It's part of their resilience building. You know, we have gone down the route here in Ireland of teaching children resilience from books. And I always argue that resilience is caught, it's not taught. And this, I think, this period for our young, while it's inconveniencing them, etc., it's resilience building.
Well, what we have, yes. No, so I advocate for this, and I believe there are research to back it up. You need emotional intelligence approach. Let me forward or backward a little bit. The education system we have now is based on the industrial age.
Sure.
So do we need to revamp it? Yes. How much and for how long, or is it an overhaul? That depends on the situation and the experiences that people have worked with, meaning some universities, they already overhaul their system. But generally, we are working within the industrial age education system. So we need to revamp it to today's education, to today's mind.
Fit for purpose, yeah.
Emotional, yes, purpose for sure. Emotional intelligence, that's very much needed, but also teach resiliency, how to cope with challenges and uncertainties. Don't give me a standardized test anymore. I don't want just to give students, my students, a test to test their knowledge. No, I want to involve them more. I want to make them more involved in understanding what the concept of each theory I'm giving them. The test itself is no longer proves a point.
It did in the past define children and define students. The outcome defined them, and probably average, if they came out as average, it held them back. It became their mindset and their self-perception.
Yes.
You know? There's a certain liberation in the view that you bring, but then it can only come from, it can only be implemented by government and by departments and comes.
It could be sponsored by governments, supported by governments, but it could be implemented by us, school educators, principals, deans, and school, university, or even at a level of elementary schools.
Do you think, in your experience, and you're very experienced in the business world, maybe it's different in the States to our experience here in Ireland. I believe that there is a certain disconnect between the world of business and the world of education. And I believe that they need to synergize. You know, businesses will decry the loss of soft skills among the young coming into the workplace, but they must get behind education. You know, we're always quoting the Finnish system here in Ireland and how the Finns basically told their educators, you're our entrepreneurs. Without you, we cannot recover from recession. All teachers went back, did their masters, and they just put their shoulder to the wheel and they turned the system around. They didn't pay them any greater salary than the Irish teachers are paid, but they talked them up. They showed them respect and showed that education was essential. You know,
you bring a very important word, which is respect. Respect is definitely needed to teachers everywhere, plus leaders and employees. You have to respect your employees, you have to respect your teachers, and vice versa. Teacher also have to respect the children, so they would reciprocate in kind. So respect and trust are very much needed and very essential. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think there is a level of connect between the education system and the workforce. Because when you study for a certain discipline or skill, or you go for, then you're landed up in a position where you are communicating what you learned in school, in the school system. Now we have no opportunities for everyone that graduates from the school system, but overall there's a little bit of connect between those two. Now, can we improve on that? Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. We can improve on it also by adding more opportunities and creating opportunities for the new graduates. So we're talking about the young now. Now let's talk about the second level. The new graduates that we go into the workforce, what do we do with them? Do we leave them without any opportunities, or do we have on purpose to create opportunities for them? And my advice is to create opportunities. You have to create opportunities, and you have to think of this new generation of newcomers to the workforce. What do you do with them? It is now, it's the responsibility of the government. First, the government first sponsor. Now it's the responsibility of governments.
Sure. I saw a posting the other day of a robot being sent for a walk down the street in Alabama. And this robot is being sold on to Ford. And they just sent him for a walk to see how others would interact with this coming down the street, the pavement, the whole lot. So I thought, my God, this is the future. And so many jobs will be lost because of this, the robotics, etc., and the AI, etc., entering into the workplace. Is there a need for a new model of how work would look in terms of maybe shorter work week, in terms of creating more opportunity for the human? Is the human being pitched against AI at the moment?
Well, this is a good question, because now what do we do with the advance of technology of AI? I doubt that is going to take all the jobs out there. It may take some of the jobs, and it has taken some of the jobs, but eventually is going to also produce more jobs. So what do we do?
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier in the talk, you talked about a wonderful disabled individual was informed he's going to be on a wheelchair. So what did he do? He went ahead and he studied accounting. And when the time came that he has to be on the wheelchair, he started with accounting.
An accountant, yeah. So it's
same thing here.
Yeah.
It's how to adapt to. The advances are coming. Your job is not going to be the same. AI is going to take over probably most of the things we do.
So it's flexibility across the lifespan to change and pivot.
Without a doubt is going to happen. This is the advances. To learn the skills needed to work with AI. Now, may I do something here as far as leaders? My advice to leaders: AI is without any emotions.
Yes, it's nothing.
So we need
sympathy. Yeah.
As you increase AI in the workforce, you as a leader, you must increase empathy.
Sure.
Because you have to care for these individuals that worked for you, working for you, or about to work for you. AI is an intelligent machine, more intelligent than man, because it's programmed to do so, because we do forget and we tend to ignore things with time because of whatever reasons. But AI is programmed, and it may produce better results and more efficiency more efficient than men, than human beings. So my recommendations, as you increase the employment of AI in your workforce, increase empathy, and you see how you help your workforce to improve, develop, and progress.
So AI really as a tool, as an assistant, but not as the master. That is the delineation.
It couldn't be the master. The master is the human being. The master is the human being that programmed it to be, to become. It may influence everything we're doing. Actually, you see it everywhere you go now. You see it when you park your car to go to the bank to get your money. It's everywhere. Everything that is the machine is helping you, that's AI. We may not call it as that. It's an ATM machine or it's a meter parking, whatever it is, but it is an AI technology employed, and that's replacing an actual human being that used to do the job. But with that, I think with time, really, it will produce more jobs, or at least equal jobs to the jobs that are lost. And the winners of this are the people who adapt to the technology. If you are working now within a company and that AI took your job, do not dwell on it. Move forward. This is my message. Move forward and get a skill that will allow you to work with the technology in advance and get the skills needed.
I noted in my reading of the Harvard Business Review that workplaces are finding in recruitment that people are coming with skills that heretofore they wouldn't have acquired, but they're going online, they're learning during this period of lockdown, and they're becoming more selective about who they will work for as well, and the lifestyle that they want to lead. And they're basically, when offered a job, they're likely to say, no, that doesn't suit me and the life I want to live. That's beginning to come out of the whole thing. You know,
that's a segment. That's a segment of society, though. That's a kind of an elite group of people that have this opportunity to say yes or no. Overall, these people who advance, these people who, when they saw 7-8 years ago the advancement of AI, they went ahead and progressed themselves and they improved themselves. At this time, they can say yes or no. But for those people who haven't, the advice now, jump on the wagon and improve your skills. When we had the computer back in the days, when the advancement of the computer, if you remember the personal computer, if you recall the time where everybody was afraid in some factories or places of where they manufacture some of these parts were burned by people who were influenced by this, lost their jobs. But with time, every house, every office has a computer now. And we worked with it and we got acquainted with it and we enhanced it to our own abilities and our own benefits. The same thing with AI. You have to adapt with the time. And as you see, everything in your household is really influenced by AI.
Sure.
Read more, find what works and what doesn't work, and get the skills needed for you to be ahead of it.
So bringing you back to the point of emotional intelligence and this whole thing of the human having the empathy, etc., is there a space there for teaching our young emotional intelligence from an earlier age? And
we should.
I believe that we're teaching our young the language of anxiety these days. Young children are able to use language, I feel anxious, etc. Words we didn't use, we didn't know anything about, we didn't know the meaning of. But it's striking me that we need to start teaching our young at an earlier stage the positivity, the language of optimism and hope, but also the language to be able to describe their feelings.
Resiliency, self-awareness. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, in general, it's a term that say, okay, what is that? It's formed of things. I mean, a few things. Communication is one of them, and we're already giving that to our children, and we help them to communicate better, right? So it's really there. Self-awareness must be part of it. Self-awareness is part of emotional intelligence. Empathy is part of emotional intelligence. So we are partially giving them some of the components of emotional intelligence at this time.
Sure.
Do we have to do more? Yes.
Yes.
As parents, we must be aware of what emotional intelligence is in general, and make sure our education system is aware of it as well, and employ these characteristics so our students at a young age are aware of emotional intelligence. As far as anxiety, okay, so uncertainties will come regardless of COVID or otherwise. COVID just came to teach our leaders a lesson, regardless of our belief systems. Some adapted with it and improved, and they became humble. They are leading with the humility now instead of the arrogance that was all along.
Yeah.
So we are being taught a lesson by a very tiny virus that we can't even see, but it made a difference. It impacted our lives. That's we call that uncertainty. Uncertainty due to whatever. But uncertainty could come at different levels. And children will face it, adults will face it, leadership will face it, and every member of society will face it. What do we do with it? We have to teach resiliency and how we can cope with these and very positive thoughts. And you talked about positive thinking, and I very much advocate for that. You have to be control, you have to have control of your mindset, how to see things using what we started with, the opportunity and the challenge. Do not think as a problem. Life is a game. Life is a game, and look at it as how to improve your life and playing the game rightly. If you dwell on the past and you dwell on your problems, you will always have problems.
Always here. Yeah.
So what you do, you create positive thoughts in your mind from the beginning, and you move forward on that. Resiliency is the key. Emotional intelligence with its components and teaching resiliency.
The school of the future, I know the OECD was quoted by the World Economic Forum in the recent past, about 4 different types of schools of the future: schooling extended outside the parameters of the 4 walls of a school, education outsourced, and maybe education on the move, any place, anytime, right across the lifespan. That seems like what we are facing into, the emphasis on lifelong learning and maybe changing to many different careers across a lifespan.
Yes. Well, the good thing about what we have experienced and are experiencing now is the opportunity to take any course of study online at the comfort of our own space, home. We could be at school, we could be at home, take a class at night, and the school could be in Ireland.
Sure.
The school could be in Ireland teaching, and I take it at night or in the morning.
No boundaries.
And in a program, eventually everything is really going to be like we have, and I'm advocating for this. I advocate this in the making of the new capitalist. Is we talk about a capitalist that sees the outside world as an extension of their own world, to improve it, not to conquer it. We don't want to conquer any more places. We don't want to dominate it. We want to improve it, because the minute you improve other societies, you are able to have peace at home and have progress at home.
It's a sharing of the progress, a sharing of the progress.
Yeah, yes, for the benefits of our human experience.
Sure.
The old thinking is gone. You cannot sustain a culture or a society with old thinking. It doesn't matter how powerful you are. You will fail, and you will be read about you in history. You have to think wisely, and you have to adopt a new line of thinking we're talking about inclusion, diversity, and equity, right? Because this is the trend now. And we talked about also the disabled. We forget, I'm gonna kind of, if I bring this one now as I talk about it, so forgive me, but we also must include the disabled in the equity, right? So the equity, inclusion, and diversity. So the new capitalist must think of an outside environment, whether outside of a state or across the oceans.
Oceans, right.
So across the ocean. So when you have an employer or a school in Ireland that can teach me, and it's accredited somehow, then I'll benefit from it. So in online education, in the virtual world we're in, it's an opportunity for everybody. So when we talk about those four categories you covered in the education system, they are used now, but we must also take advantage of this opportunity to the betterment of all. As a young listening to this, a young adult listening to this, the opportunity is here for you. You can go to any school of your choice and take the skill that you need to improve, the education you need and the course you need. Use it to your own advantage. Online education is an innovation to the old system. Take advantage of it. Do not think it's an online education is not worth it. On the contrary, it's the new innovation that we are living in now. And how you use it, it's really is determined by you.
Take me through to your interest in securing places for disabled at university and throughput into the workplace.
Good question. I'm glad you asked that question. As you know, disability and advocacy for disability is dear to my heart. Now, we're lucky here in the state, we have systems in place. We have the ADA system, American with Disability Acts, which makes it a mandatory for employers or education institution to have inclusion, to have something called reasonable accommodation of these individuals. To answer your question rightly here is we have to do this. The law is mandatory, but most employers in most education institutions, they will work within the minimum and what's allowed, and they may not go all the way by choice or otherwise. It's incumbent upon all of us that care about this segment of society to make it a must that we place them on the table, to have a seat for the disabled individual on the table. How do we do that? By advocacy, true. By reminding others of the law, that's true. But by actually proving a disabled individual is really not a disabled individual. A disabled individual is just happened because of life circumstances, not to be able to commit to physically or a little bit mentally, but not necessarily voluntary commitment. Is due to circumstances.
Sure.
You become disabled because you're sick. So what do? This is where we use the reasonable accommodation and being kind as a human being. So if you're an employer and you had an employee, I'm not telling you employ disabled individual because I know you may not, because it's expensive for you to create the environment, unless you believe and you have a wonderful heart to employ this segment of society. You may not do it, but you must be reminded that you had an employee that was working for you and became disabled. What do? Are you going to fire that employee? Of course, you're not going to fire that employee. So what do? You must understand the situation of that employee and what he or she needs. And thankfully, there are nonprofit organizations that will help employers what to do and how to do it. And if I may talk about disability, there are two types of disability. Allow me to do that. There is the physical disability,
sure,
which we see individuals on wheelchairs, and there are people with invisible disabilities. These people that suffer within, like an example, people with diabetes, people with heart problems. You may see them strong, but they actually
there is a silent disability there.
The visually impaired, you would know they're blind or visually impaired because you can see them. But what if somebody has a condition within that you can see? So these individuals must be understood as well and must be advocated for as well. But the key is it takes a good heart, a good society that cares for its citizen, regardless of who they are, color, religion, sex, orientations. You care for them as a human being and you involve them and you employ them. Because if you employ these individuals, you're going to give them confidence and self-esteem, and you'll be surprised. One of the most successful people are disabled. It's like when you see now we see everything, you see individual jumping and they have no legs.
Sure.
The power is within. The power is within. So
Determination.
disability is just a stigmatized because they may affect the workforce of the individual. They may think, okay, this person is unable to perform. But the reality is, if you give them
Chance.
the chance and work within the law, at least here, yes, we have reasonable accommodation. I don't know in Ireland if you have that or not.
We have an Equal Status Act, which is, outlines 10 grounds on which people cannot be discriminated against, and disability is one.
That's one of them.
Age, gender, sexual orientation, membership of a minority group, all of that. There are different points, and they're very much enshrined in education, etc.
That's wonderful.
We've got a DARE program where a disabled gain access to the like of Trinity College, and then the throughput to the workplace. But in looking at the figures for unemployment, 49.7% of the disabled are not in the workplace. They don't have work. So that is difficult. It is difficult.
That's actually sad to hear. And the reason it is like this, it's because there are no reminders. There are laws on papers. There are laws to make you look good. And it's commended. And I hope more countries, they will adopt such programs and such laws, and to make it mandatory for organizations and education institutions to include people with disability. However, that's not going to happen unless members of the community or people who care about these members of the community to be the voice for these individuals, and be reminders that you have to employ them. You must employ them, because if you employ them, it tells more about you as an individual, your kindness and compassion and empathy.
What they bring to a workplace as well is unique. What disabled people can bring.
Now, from our eyes, it's uniqueness. But from the eyes of the employer, you're gonna bring. When we call it handicap, there's a reason. This individual is handicapped, and sorry for the term, it's a strong term, but there's a reason. So the assumption in the mind of these employers, this individual is going to bring handicap to the workforce. So they're going to what? They're going to limit the success and the ability of this performance to happen. I spend time on them. I'm going to train them. Why would I have to do this? Why somebody else would do it? So the mentality has to change on the part of the employer, and it's our job to make it happen. Yes, disabled individual have handicap because they're disabled. That's why it's called disabled. But it's also your social responsibility, your corporate responsibility to employ them and give them the education needed for them to improve. When you have an employee that is not disabled and you send them through self-development courses, you are improving definitely your company, and you're improving the team that they work in the company. The same thing with disabled individual. All they need is just a little bit of a hand. Just give me that reasonable accommodation, allowed by law, and I'll prove to you that disability is not an issue. I have the ability within. Just give me the chance to prove it. Give me the chance to prove it.
If we had more of you in the world, we might succeed quicker and at a greater depth,
Well, a show like this, thank you for doing this, and thank you for asking the questions. A show like this will bring awareness to the issue, bring awareness that there are segments of society are staying homes, not because of COVID. They are truly disabled, but they're staying home because they're not allowed to work due to non-inclusion. We talk about diversity and equity, but you're actually not experiencing the pain and the anguish this individual, and also, when you don't have a job, you lose self-esteem. You feel that you're not connected. You feel you have no importance. And this is where anxiety and depression comes, and they come to play. Because if you if they feel they don't care, the only people that care for them, their parents, and even their parents, they may get old and they send them to non-profit organizations, facilities and stuff. So they really feel neglected. It is a duty, and if I may have a voice here, it's a duty of every employer, regardless of country, to employ individuals with a disability. I have a pioneer research on the inclusion of disabled individual online. Now, by law, we have what we call a reasonable accommodation, and there's a if you go to any facility, a disabled individual will go to any facility physically, they must have like a specifics as far as 3 feet to get the wheelchair in and access, equal access the ramp and stuff. That's physically. My research, humbly, I have a research on how to create a reasonable accommodation to individual with disability online. And this is a pioneer. This is a pioneer. I have wrote about it in a article. It's also in a book coming up. It's called Reasonable Accommodation. Actually, it escaped my mind. Sir, forgive me if I didn't cover it earlier. I'm not here to promote myself. I'm here to talk about the issue. But a research like this, it deals with actually few segments of. I call them the learning model of attainment, of attaining an education or a degree for a disabled individuals. There are factors within this model. There are intrafactor and there's external factors, meaning we need a teacher that cares.
Yes.
We need an employer that cares. We need a application of the law and understanding what the law is all about. In your case, I think in our case, it works because you have laws in place. We have ADA and you have their act. So it will work because if you're aware that it is a must that you provide a reasonable accommodation, and if you don't, you have litigation and you have a lawsuit on your hand, and you have to be careful.
In you moving online with this, you're reaching more people, aren't you?
If my model applies in any educational institution, I will guarantee you the success rate of people with disability, especially within a higher education, is going to happen. Because now they employ them. What they do is they give them reasonable accommodation by extension of time to finish the class. But that's not enough. That's minimum. Okay, reasonable accommodation at the minimum is not acceptable anymore. You must give them like the model I'm talking about. You must give them a teacher that cares, a teacher that has positive attitude, a teacher that say, hey, it's okay, you're fine. Because when you're disabled, you're at a loss. You need somebody to care for you. When we say care for you, not babysit you, meaning give me a little bit of a strength that I needed.
Yeah, empower them.
Empower my thoughts. I'm already able. Just empower my thoughts to achieve, because I can achieve it. Yeah. I can do it. So a teacher with positive attitude, an employer with a positive attitude, a CDS system. Well, we call an Office of Disability Services. You must have a disability services that care, not an extension of time only, not an extension, but understand what it is. And also, now this is the part where it's very important. I realize, and I believe based on the research, is most students in higher education will benefit from communication courses and will benefit from management and organization behavior courses, regardless, undergraduate level or a graduate level. If you give them these courses, you will enhance their abilities and their personalities. So self-development courses for employers, instead of send them to those two courses, I guarantee you their personality will expand and enhance, and they will be more contributing members of your organization.
Sure.
So, because in organizational behaviors, we talk about attitude, we talk about mood, we talk about microaggression, we talk about perception, we talk about organizational design, we talk about the organization in general. So you give them an overall perspective of the organization plus themselves. themselves, they understand themselves, and this is where the self-awareness comes into play. So these, I mean, that's what it is, and hopefully it will be in a book. It's called Reasonable Accommodation. I will
When
print
is
that
that
soon.
coming? When is that coming out?
It is out. It is ready. It's just a matter of time
Ready to go.
to publish it, because I want to. The truth is, I want to have it with an impact. The minute they say Dr. Abraham, I want people to look at it. I don't want to just say it's oh, he published a book. I want this book to have an impact, and that's why I'm delaying its publishing.
The timing now is right to get it out now.
The timing is perfect. The timing is perfect. The timing is perfect.
But I'll ask you a hard question to finish up. There always has been a divide, the haves and the have-nots. Do you believe in the world of tomorrow that that divide will become more pronounced unless education systems wake up to the possibilities of the future?
Yes, I believe the haves will always control the have-nots, and will always be richer and richer and richer, because we have a system that is unjust. Until we have not only an education system, until we have a governance, a system of governance, governments, regardless of also location as well, that will have an equal of distribution of wealth. The employee, remember we talk about the making of the new capitalist, the employee, shareholders, and also the customer, they have value each. They have value, probably if not equal value, at least a value, a share of value that is meaningful.
Dignity, all of that, yeah.
All of it. So when you are an employee working for a company, and you make the minimum wage, and you have a paycheck to paycheck, how can you ever succeed?
Sure.
How can you ever succeed? There is no equity in the distribution of wealth. There is no equity.
It's nearly more polarized at the minute, is it? You know, with individuals, an increasing amount of individuals, billionaire status, and huge companies turning over billions. Where is it going to stop?
This will always continue. These are outliers. Outliers, what do I mean? We have every now and then you have a company that makes millions or billions and may share with some companies. They do share. We call those the open community. Well, they're organizations that care for their employees. We have some of them, okay? But overall, we're talking the have-nots here. The have-nots, majority, they don't have it. Reason, because the system is unjust. I mean, if you want to solve the problem, we don't just provide like what's happening now. It's wonderful what's happening now. I call it sharing of wealth. Yes, there's 1.9 trillion is provided to the people who have low income in our states. The 2,000 here, 1,400 or 1,200. So they're sharing the wealth with the poor, with the people who have not, to, in a way, not balance the field. That's not going to even have a trace, but it's temporary fix. This is sharing the wealth. 1.9 trillion, billions of it went to the have-nots. The have-nots is going to have it for a while, and then eventually you're not going to have it anymore because there are no opportunities, unless the government or governments create an environment where the minimum wage is no longer just $15, and it's not even that now. You need to provide a pay more than the minimum wage for people to even have a sustainable future.
Yeah.
Sustainable future. So for the issue to be solved, you must create an equity in pay. And the way we do that, hopefully, my new thinking of revamping the capitalist system, that the I alone is not enough. You must think of the we and society, and improve the lots of the individual, the shareholders for sure, and also the customer. The customer must also find value of what they're buying. The employee must find value when they contribute. I don't want the minimum wage. I don't want to be a slave all my life, because, when you take slavery away, we kind of gave it another term.
Yeah, we
Employment.
dressed it up. We dressed it up. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that we're still slaves, but in a way, we have a little bit of dignity in it
Yeah.
that we may leave at our own will. It's a free will contract. The free will contract to be employed and provide all your efforts in time and be slaved for a certain time, and then get a little bit of amount for this compensation.
Yeah.
So for the have-nots will always be there. You may have outliers every now. And my advice, be on your own. Find your business. Create an opportunity. Don't think of the problem as a problem. Look at it as a challenge. Look at it in a positive note. Look at it as a challenge. Nobody cares for you except you. Care for others by being a role model. Don't use the system to have disadvantages. Use it to your own advantage. Find the best of it and use it. Do not criticize it in a way that will put you in trouble. Leaders in general care less about you unless you have a powerful voice, and you may make the difference.
That was my idea of asking questions. I think we've become increasingly passive. It's nearly as though people are afraid to ask questions now, and they're just, they may complain in their own little pockets, but they don't ask the questions. And until people start asking the questions, things won't change.
Yes. Yes, very true.
Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for accepting my invitation, giving your precious time to talking to me. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.